So we're going to continue creating compound statements using connectives. We've already discussed how to negate a simple statement. We've already discussed how to negate a compound statement. We've already discussed how to create a compound statement out of simple statements using the connective and, which is known as a conjunction. We've also discussed how to create a compound statement out of simple statements using the connective or, which is known as a disjunction. So for this example here, we're going to continue with our connectives, except this particular connective is called a conditional statement, and it's written right here. A conditional statement is also known as an if-then statement. That's also a connective. An if-then statement is a unique type of connective. It's made up, I guess you can think of it as two parts. So for our if-then here, we have our first clause, which is if. The if part is called the antecedent. That's this part right here, the if part. Then the second part, that's the then part, that's the second clause. That's known as the consequent. And that's this one right here. So it's always listed as the antecedent and then the consequent, the if-then. So here we have these two simple statements. We have the simple statement P, Maggie will practice the trombone. And then we have another simple statement here, Q, Maggie will be first chair of the symphony. So it's asking us to write the simple statements in a compound statement using the conditional statement, if then, and then write the compound statement symbolically. So this is how we write. We'll start off with the first simple statement here, P, but we're going to write it as if Maggie practices the trombone. There's our comma. This is known as our first clause here. Then we'll continue it with the second simple statement. Then she will be first chair of the symphony. So obviously, as we read it, this conditional statement, if Maggie practices the trombone, then she will be first chair of the symphony. So to write that symbolically then, is here is our first simple statement, Maggie will practice the trombone. So here is our P. Here's our second simple statement within the other clause here. Maggie will be first chair of the symphony. So this is our Q. And then the connective is represented by this arrow. And the arrow is always going to point from the antecedent to the consequent, so it's always going to point to the right. And this, of course, is read if P, then Q is how that's pronounced. Now keep in mind that we are speaking in English languages, we are speaking in simple terms, so there are other ways that we can write a conditional statement. This is the most basic and straightforward and understandable way. But one other way that this could be written is it could say, if Maggie practices the trombone, and we could take the then out of there. You don't necessarily have to have a then in there. It can be implied. So it could be read as, if Maggie practices the trombone, she will be first chair of the symphony. So it could also be stated that way. But it's to understand that there's an antecedent, the first clause, and a consequent, the second clause.